Artificial intelligence is completely reshaping our world, from our economies to how we live. But while we hear a lot about what's happening in certain parts of the globe, what does this AI revolution actually look like in Latin America and the Caribbean? Well, today we're going to dive into a really groundbreaking report that gives us the first ever data-driven look at the region's AI readiness. And this quote from the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, or ECLAC, really sets the stage perfectly. It gets right to the heart of the matter. For this region, AI isn't just another cool tech gadget. It's seen as a potential game changer, a real strategic opportunity to tackle some serious, long-standing challenges. So, what are these big challenges? Well, the report calls them development traps, and they are the core problem that AI, if used correctly, could finally help solve. Now, the really tricky part here is that these three traps are all connected. They kind of feed off each other. Low growth makes inequality even worse. High inequality puts a huge strain on society, and weak institutions just don't have the capacity to fix either of those problems. It's this vicious cycle that's held back progress for decades. So the big hope here is that AI could be the tool that helps finally break that cycle. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, before you can build a strategy, you've got to have a map. You need to know where you are, what you're good at, and where the really critical gaps are. So how in the world do you measure something as big and complicated as a whole country's AI potential? And that is where this comes in, the Latin American Artificial Intelligence Index, or ILIA for short. This is a huge deal. It's the first real effort to measure and track AI progress across 19 different countries in the region. It's that essential map that policymakers have been waiting for. Okay, so to really get a handle on the region, ILIA gives each country what you could call an AI health checkup. And this checkup is built on three fundamental pillars that together give us a really complete picture of what's going on. So the first pillar is all about enabling factors. You can think of this as the foundation, right? The bedrock. Do you have the basic building blocks in place? This looks at everything from internet speeds and computing power to, having enough skilled people and available data. If this foundation isn't strong, nothing else can really get off the ground. Next up is Pillar 2, research, development, and adoption. Because look, it's not enough to just have the raw materials. You have to be doing something with them. So this pillar checks for things like new scientific publications and patents, but most importantly, it asks, are businesses and people actually using AI in their day-to-day lives? And finally, we have Pillar 3, governance. This is basically about having rules of the road. Does the country have a national AI plan? Are there ethical guidelines to make sure things don't go off the rails? Is there a vision? This is what ensures that AI development is responsible, secure, and, actually helping people. So once ILIA assesses countries across those three pillars, it doesn't just spit out a number. It actually groups them into these really interesting categories based on their overall AI maturity. This helps us see the different stages of the journey across the region. And these categories are pioneers, adopters, and explorers. Pioneers, well, they're the frontrunners, leading the pack. Adopters are sort of in the middle. They're making real progress, but they've still got some work to do. And then you have the explorers, who are really just at the beginning of their journey, facing some pretty fundamental challenges. And looking at them side by side like this really makes the difference pop. On one side, you have pioneers with strong tech and lots of specialized talent. On the other, explorers are just starting to build out their ecosystems. And this really highlights a major risk the report talks about, that old inequalities could just get repeated in this new AI era. Okay, so now that we get how the index works, what did it actually find? Let's dig into some of the most striking results from the report. Let's start with just this number, 1.12%. Any guesses what that might represent? Okay, get this. This is the investment gap. While Latin America and the Caribbean have almost 9% of the world's population, the entire region gets just a tiny, tiny fraction of all global AI investment. That's a huge hurdle that really limits its potential right from the start. Next up, the number 9. So, 9 countries in the region actually have a national AI strategy written down on paper. But, and this is a big but, the report found that this enthusiasm hasn't really turned into action. Without real budgets or clear plans to make it happen, these strategies are at risk of just staying on the page. And this brings us to another huge issue, the human talent bottleneck. It turns out general AI literacy, just basic awareness, is pretty high. But when you look for people with actual professional training, that number drops. And the pool of highly specialized experts you need to build new AI, it's critically small. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. There's a major bright spot here, and it's a big one. Public enthusiasm is through the roof. The region is already the third largest market in the world for downloading generative AI apps. That shows there's a massive appetite for this technology, which could be a huge catalyst for adoption. So, with this kind of mixed bag, huge potential on one hand and some serious gaps on the other, what's the path forward? Where does the region go from here? When you get to the end of the report, the message is crystal clear. The only path forward is collaboration. The challenges, the infrastructure, the talent, the investment, they're just too big for any single country to solve by itself. Success is going to depend on working together. And that really frames the central choice here. The report leaves us with this powerful question. Will the future of AI in Latin America be a story of countries competing against each other for a tiny pool of experts? Or will they build a collaborative ecosystem where talent is shared and everyone rises together? The path they choose is going to define the next decade.